Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the Ukrainian conflict. According to information we have, during the previous night, both the Russians and the Ukrainians attacked each other, once again using dozens or maybe even hundreds of drones. The Ukrainians, according to information we have, once again attacked in the northern direction, in the direction of the Leningrad region, and this morning we received this picture where we can see a fire anomaly to the southeast of the city of St. Petersburg, and as you can see, this fire anomaly took place on the territory of this oil refinery, which means that according to the sizes of this fire anomaly, we can say that this oil refinery was significantly damaged. Furthermore, the Russians are saying that overnight they managed to bring down 20 drones in this region. I would like to remind you that during the previous days, during the 5 or 6 days, the Ukrainians were attacking these territories significantly. It seems that the Russians have huge problems with air defense forces, and today we received additional videos of consequences of Ukraine attacks that took place during the previous days. I would like to remind you that the Ukrainians attacked several days ago the city of Primorsk, and today we received additional pictures where we can see the consequences of attack, and as you can see, a lot of objects of energy infrastructure and export infrastructure of the Russian Federation were significantly damaged. In this video, we can see that the special forces of the Russian Federation still haven't managed to stabilize the situation around the city of Primorsk. There is a very huge fire, and it seems that the Russians are not able to stop this. The Russians also attacked the territory of Ukraine overnight, and this morning the Minister of Defense of Ukraine stated that during the previous night the Russians used 153 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. The pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that mainly the Russians were attacking the southern and the southwestern parts of Ukraine. So we're talking about the territory around the city of Kryvyi Rog, around the settlement of Znamenka and the Odessa region. During the night we received lots of videos and pictures where we can see the consequences of attacks. In these videos we can see the sky over the city of Kryvyi Rog, and here we can see many drones flying over the territory seeking for its targets. Later we received the report that as a result of attack the Russians managed to damage the railway station and several trains that were located in this area that the Ukrainians were using for logistic purposes. Furthermore, we received a picture from the settlement of Znamenka, and here we can see almost the same story. The Russians attacked a hangar on the territory of the railway station, and as a result of attack, another train, as you can see, was significantly damaged. The Ukrainians have huge problems with electricity, so that is why they have less and less possibilities to use railway service with trains that use electricity, and the Ukrainians for logistic purposes and for the military purposes as well. So that is why the Ukrainians are forced to use trains of this type that doesn't need the electricity. So that is why the Russians are hunting and attacking these trains, trying to reduce the logistic capabilities of the armed forces of Ukraine. Furthermore, several videos and several explosions were recorded and took place on the territory of the city of Dnipro. In this video we can see a Russian drone Geraint that was attacking the territory. So as you can see in this video, the drone fell on the territory or on the river, on the surface of the river. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. During the previous night we received lots of updates. The pro-Ukrainian sources confirmed that the Russian spring offensive operation is intensifying. As you can see, we received lots of interesting changes from the Zaporizhzhia direction, so let's discuss everything in details. And first let's talk about the western Zaporizhzhia direction. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly. This is the end of the 25th of March and this is the beginning of the 26th of March of 2026. According to pro-Ukrainian sources and neutral mappers, the armed forces of Ukraine during the previous days managed to improve their position significantly in the area of the villages of Rychnoye, Veselyanka and Primorska. And based on the report that was published by a neutral neutral mapper, we have adjusted the map. So the Ukrainians, as we can see, improved their position significantly, and we have added additional contested area. But a few hours later, we received a video that was published by pro-Russian sources, and here we can see Russian soldiers that were moving through this area. And here we can see lots of episodes of how Russians were controlling positions in the villages of Rychne and Primorska. So in this video, there were two episodes that were geolocated. One of them took place in this area. This is the beginning of the video where we can see Russian soldiers were moving in the northern direction along this tree line in the direction of the settlement by the name of Rychne. And during the second part of the video, we could see how Russians were controlling this territory. So as of now, it doesn't prove anything, because I would like to remind you that several days ago we received a video published by pro-Ukrainian sources of very heavy clashes in this area, and that the Ukrainians, as a result of a counter-offensive operation, managed to improve their positions in this region. But anyway, we have some doubts whether the Ukrainians have strong control over the territories that were marked by different mappers as the territories under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. So we believe that it's better to color this territory as a contested area until we receive additional clarifications. Furthermore, we received the video from the settlement of Primorska, and in this video we can see how Ukrainians were moving through the settlement of Primorska, through its western parts. We can see probably a group of sabotage and reconnaissance forces of the armed forces of Ukraine that were entering the settlement from the west, from the area of former Dnipro River. And now we can see how Russians began bombing and attacking possible positions of Ukrainians in this region. The strikes took place in this area, and based on this video, we came to the conclusion that several sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of Ukraine entered the settlement of Primorska, and that the Ukrainians continue infiltration process further in the southern direction with the purpose to get as close as possible to the city of Stepnogorsk. And the keeping infiltration process also was confirmed by different neutral mappers. At the same time, the Russians are intensifying their activities in the direction of the city of Orekhov, and based on different updates, we have adjusted the map in this area. The Russians are about to cut this pocket, and the Russians are trying to improve their positions around the villages of Zapasna and Novonikolaevka, trying to increase and create additional buffer zone around these settlements. So the clashes here are very heavy. Furthermore, according to information we have, the Russians are trying to break through Ukraine's defense, answer this layer of fortifications with the purpose to cut this territory physically, at least into several pieces. Now let's talk about the eastern Zaporizhzhia. Here we have almost the same picture. The Russians are trying to infiltrate in the western direction, in the direction of the city of Orekhov, and the Ukrainians continue their counter-offensive operation in the direction of the settlement of Uspenovka. And these are the changes on the ground between the dates. Let's discuss everything in details. According to neutral mappers and according to different sources, the Russians improved their positions significantly between the settlements of Zaliznichne and Mirne. So several territories were marked as the territories under complete control, and the Russians were keeping infiltration process further in the direction of the settlement of Gulyai-Polskaya from the east. Furthermore, we received several updates, and according to these updates, the Russians during the previous days managed to improve their positions significantly between two defense layers, between the layer of the settlements of Verkhnya Tersa, Kopony, Shirokaya, and the layer of defense positions through the villages of Yegorovka, Novoselovka, and Gulyai-Polskaya. The Russians managed to, let's say, break through Ukraine's defense between these two lines, and now the Russians are trying to attack Ukrainians from behind. So this is a very interesting situation. The Russians, with these attacks, managed to infiltrate very deep inside of the Ukrainian defense belt, and from these positions, the Russians are getting very close and close to the city of Orekhov itself from the northeast. Furthermore, according to different mappers, the Ukrainians managed to recapture the settlement of Rizdvyanka. This information was published by neutral mappers. Based on these reports, we have adjusted the territory and we have colored this area as a gray zone until we get additional clarifications. Now let's talk about the northern Zaporizhzhia direction, where the Ukrainians continue their counter-offensive operation. During the previous days, during the previous night, the map has been adjusted significantly. This is the end of the 25th of March. This is the beginning of the 26th of March. The Ukrainians, according to different sources, improved their positions in fields between the settlement of Uspenovka and the river of Gaichur. So these territories were marked as a contested area until we get additional clarifications. And the Ukrainians, according to different sources, improved their positions around the village of Verbova. We add additional contested area. Furthermore, according to neutral mappers, different sources, the Ukrainians are keeping infiltration process further in the southern direction. And according to different sources, first sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of Ukraine were spotted on the outskirts of the settlement of Uspenovka and the Uspenovka agglomeration. Currently, this is a very dangerous situation, but the main thing is that the Russians, it seems, are not doing anything with this. The Russians, it seems, believe that they will be able to stop the Ukrainians along the line of settlements in Gulay Polye, Novaya, Uspenovka, and Zelene Polye. It seems that the Russians 100% sure that this defense layer will be able to slow down the Ukrainians and to force them to fall back, or at least to stop them at this progress. Because we see that while the Ukrainians are attacking in the direction of this line, the Russians are not changing their plans regarding the city of Orekhov, and the Russians are keeping advancing in this area. So I would like to remind you that this is a major and probably the most important battle of 2026, which will probably resolve lots of questions and will give us the understanding of how exactly the conflict on the territory of Ukraine will develop in late 2026, in the late 2026 and in the 2027s. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Dobropolye direction. During the previous night, we received lots of updates. According to information we have, the Russians began infiltration process. So the Russians began advancing in the area of Sergeyevka. The Russians are sending their sabotage and reconnaissance groups in the direction of the same settlement from the east. The Russians began advancing further in the northern direction from the settlement of Grishna towards Vasilievka and Mirne. The Russians are trying to improve their positions towards the settlement of Dobropolye, and first sabotage and reconnaissance groups were recorded around the settlement of Shevchenka. So the Russians are advancing in this region, trying to force the Ukrainians to fall back. So as for this direction, the Ukrainians still haven't launched anything, something similar like a counter-offensive operation, but it seems that due to this activity of Russians, we believe that Ukrainians will try to counter-attack Russians somewhere between the settlements of Dobropolye and Drushkovka. It seems the most logical position and, let's say, place where the Ukrainians will try to counter-attack Russians with the purpose to ruin the Russia's plans regarding this offensive operation to the south of the settlement of Dobropolye. As for the Konstantinovka direction, during the previous nights we haven't received anything special. The Russians were bombing and attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the northern parts of the settlement. Furthermore, additional groups and several groups of Russian forces were keeping infiltration process in the direction of the central part of the settlement, trying to outflank and to outmaneuver the main positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. And during the previous days, the Ukrainians were doing the same. The Ukrainians were keeping advancing in the area of the city of Chasiv Yar, trying to get and to cut physically N32 road that connects the cities of Bakhmut and Konstantinovka. So the Ukrainians were keeping advancing in this area. I would like to remind you that pro-Russian sources stated that all these attempts were repelled by Russians in the past, but different sources are complaining that the process of infiltration is still ongoing from the Ukrainian side. Now let's talk about the Slaviansk direction. Here we have the biggest changes overnight. So this is the situation by the end of the 25th of March. The Russians, according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, have captured the settlement of Nikiforovka, and based on that report we adjusted the map yesterday, and today we added additional infiltration area where the Russians are trying to improve their positions, are trying to cut the main logistic lines of Ukraine and to isolate the main defense layers and pockets of the armed forces of Ukraine. And according to these infiltration zones that were added during the previous night, we see that the first sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation managed to get the city limits of the settlement of Alexandrovka. So these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 25th of March, and this is the beginning of the 26th of March. Furthermore, the Russians and their main forces managed to establish complete control and to secure these forests to the southeast of Alexandrovka. So from one side, the sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation are keeping advancing deeper. Meanwhile, the main Russian forces are trying to secure everything behind the edge line of the sabotage and reconnaissance forces of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, as for the northern flank, the Russians sent sabotage and reconnaissance groups also further in the western direction. The Russians managed to infiltrate Ukrainian positions through these small forests. Furthermore, the Russians managed to outflank the main positions and the main defense layer of the armed forces of Ukraine in the area of the western part of Krivoluka and further in the western direction. So now the Russians are trying to isolate this defense layer and this stronghold of the armed forces of Ukraine with the purpose later to secure this area with a regular army, which means that most likely the Russians will continue advancing further in the western direction. They will continue sending their infiltration groups along this tree line with the purpose probably to establish certain control over this territory. And if the Russians are able to do this, then they will ruin the entire logistics of the armed forces of Ukraine in this direction. As for the northern directions, during the previous 12 hours, we haven't received anything special. Several videos were published of how Russians were bombing the city of Izum, and small changes were recorded in the area of the settlement of Peshana. Yesterday, the progress on the ground in this area was confirmed by several pro-Russian sources. Today, this information was also confirmed by neutral mappers. Now let's discuss the situation in the Middle East, where the United States of America are collecting their forces before the beginning of the ground operation. I would like to remind you that currently there is a very big issue and big question in front of the Americans. What islands is better to take first? There are two islands in the area of the Persian Gulf and the Strait of Hormuz. The first island is the Hark Island, and according to information we have, Iran has reinforced Hark Island with troops, air defenses, and mines, preparing for a potential U.S. ground operation. U.S. officials warn of high risk, including heavy casualties due to layered defenses and recent deployments of Iranian manpads and anti-armor mines. Yesterday, we discussed lots of pictures that were published from the Hark Island. There are lots of soldiers of the Iranian forces with FPV drones who are waiting for the U.S. troops that may start landing operation very, very soon. And the second island where the United States of America may start the ground operation is the island of Keshem. This is the biggest island in the Persian Gulf, and this could be probably the best foothold for the United States of America and the coalition to control the entire Strait of Hormuz. If the United States of America takes under complete control the island of Hajm, this will allow them to establish complete control over the Strait of Hormuz, and this will allow the United States of America to save the infrastructure of the Hark Island. Because if the ground operation starts in this area, obviously that's the entire infrastructure of this Hark Island would be reduced to ruins. But when talking about the island of Keshem, in this case, the United States of America will be able to save the infrastructure, the oil export infrastructure of Iran, and the United States of America will be able to start dictate their conditions of the ending of the conflict. At the same time, we're receiving reports that many countries in the Middle East region, like United Arab Emirates and Qatar, are considering to join this operation. The United Arab Emirates wants to continue attacking Iran. That was stated by the Wall Street Journal. The ambassador to the United States of America wrote in an article published tonight in the Wall Street Journal: Iran's nuclear capabilities have been damaged, its branches have been weakened, but more effort must be made to remove the missile and drone threat. Today, this morning, I came to the conclusion that there can be just one owner of the Strait of Hormuz. Currently, Iran is the owner of the Strait of Hormuz, and they dictate the rules of the game in this area. So that is why this is something unacceptable for most of the Middle East countries and the Persian Gulf states, which means that with military means, most likely they will try to unblock the Strait of Hormuz. As for the previous night, we started receiving first videos of how the coalition was bombing and attacking the Iranian air bases in the southern parts of Iran, probably preparing themselves before the beginning of the ground operation. So the situation in this region is very complicated, and several sources stated that in coming days the ground operation may start. Iran's state-affiliated channel claims that Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates are two regional countries actively supporting the occupation of Iranian islands, and most likely in the future, if this operation is successful, the ground operation is successful, most likely the United States of America will transfer control over these islands to these states. Iran has warned it may block the Bab el-Mandeb Strait in response to attacks on its territory or islands, according to Iranian military sources reported by Iranian media. Another important thing is that Iran has told mediators that Lebanon must be included in any ceasefire with the United States and Israel. So as you can see, despite the fact that the Iranians reject any idea about negotiations with the United States of America, we received lots of statements about the process behind the doors. Furthermore, according to media, Iran has officially allowed friendly countries, including Russia, India, and China, to pass through the Strait of Hormuz. And probably to sell oil and to earn money on this. So this is the situation in the Middle East. Once again, according to different sources, tomorrow the first units of the United States of America will arrive in this area, and possibly on Saturday the United States of America may begin the ground operation. At the same time, the Israelis are saying that Israel is accelerating strikes on Iran's arms industry, fearing a US-Iran peace plan could halt the war before key objectives are met. Furthermore, the Israeli sources are saying that Israel is concerned the US could push for 1 month ceasefire with Iran to open talks. And the most important thing, that Israel is preparing for the possibility that Trump could announce a ceasefire in Iran by next Saturday. So which means that in coming days, and this is something unacceptable for the Israelis, as we can see. And that's it for the short video. The military summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.